Yeah, that's right. That's right. Easter
Oh,
beverage.
that's a good start. My name is Ronald Okhuizen. I'm editor-in-chief of Parool, and I was invited by Scheltema to, and by of course, the make of this great book, to have an interview with you. And meanwhile, that's the big surprise. You will cook, eh? And you will make some food, and all the viewers here can do that. Try that at home. So let's start first. And I have questions because a lot of readers send questions, and even during this conversation, people will start sending questions, and I hope you have the answers. Yotam used to be here once, several times. You have the key of this bookshop, Scheltema in Amsterdam. And once we had a dinner with readers of the newspaper. So that's a great memory. That's a long time ago, before COVID-19. So I was wondering for you both, Ishta and Yotam, first before we start talking about your great book, Flavour. How are you dealing with this time? Because also for you, it must be hard because the restaurants are closed. You can't travel to promote your book. It's doing very well anyway, but still then. How do you deal with it? Because it's a hard time for everyone who's in the restaurants and in this business.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's good to be back at Scheltema, even remotely. I guess it's better than nothing. Yeah, it's a challenging time for us, as you can probably imagine. And I know in Holland you're struggling with the same level of spread as we have here. So the restaurants are still open. Tomorrow is going to be the last day. We're going to be shutting them down again, unfortunately. But I don't know. I was talking to Ista earlier. We kind of like almost got used to it, you know, in a kind of a sinister way. You kind of do it without thinking. But yeah, it's a tough moment, but at least we've got the book to celebrate and talk about, which is a very exciting moment for Ista and for me. And yeah, we would love to share with you some of the concepts in the book, some of the great recipes, and just kind of chat and explain how it came about.
Yes, yeah, we're looking forward to it. What are you going to cook?
So we're going to make a couple of recipes, and both of them are quite good at explaining some of the concepts in the book. So if you've got the book, you might have noticed that it's divided into three sections: process, and produce. So one of the recipes that we're going to do is a hummus, and it's kind of quite an untraditional hummus, and Yotam will tell you about how it's untraditional. But it's topped with an infused oil. And so that comes from the infusing section of the book, which is from process. And then we're also going to talk about the butter beans and smoked cascabel oil, which shows us why charring is such a good way to celebrate vegetables. So
I'm just going to talk about the hummus for a second while the oil is heating up.
Yeah.
So, you know, people would know that I'm pretty obsessed about hummus, but Ista has suggested to do things slightly differently this time.
Yeah.
So hummus is, although it has some tahini, it's not solely tahini based. It's got olive oil as well in the base. We've got ginger and garlic, and it's quite a quick one to make. So we've made the hummus, but what is more interesting for me in this particular recipe is to show you a little bit about something about the concept of infusing or infusion that Ista and I use a lot in the book. So what happens often, and it repeats itself in several recipes, and in the two recipes that we're going to show now, is that we heat up some oil and we add aromatics. So in this case, we've got some olive oil here. I just wanted to heat up a little bit more. So I'm going to give it a moment. And what we're doing is two things. We're adding flavor to the oil. So infusing the oil with whatever it is that goes into it. But we also create a garnish and something with a bit of texture, something slightly crispy to go on at the end. So for this particular recipe, and this is something that we do on various occasions in the book. So you would find, for instance, we've got a version, slightly bastardized version of Papa Pomodoro, which is a fresh tomato and bread dish, stale bread dish that is super popular in Italy, and you guys probably know it. But we've kind of added a few kind of Asian flavors to it. So it's got curry leaf, mustard seeds, and anything else, coriander.
Yeah.
To change it, and it's got the same kind of.
And lots of lime.
Lots of
lime zest. Yeah.
And that's added to, that is an infused oil that we add to it. In this case, so this starts to bubble. So I'm going to add ginger.
Do you want to show them the plate?
Yeah.
So I'll just quickly show you what we're putting in for the hummus. We've got chili, ginger, cinnamon, garlic, and coriander. So that's going to fry up and become really nice and crispy. And like Yotam said, it's going to infuse the oil. So the oil is actually going to become really beautiful, yellow, dark, kind of a yellowy red. And then it's also going to get crispy at the same time.
So you can see that here, the oil with the...
very well. We can see it very well.
Sorry?
We can see it very well. So it's working very well. And I was wondering, because for Yotam, after Plenty and More Plenty, this is a third book about really a kind of celebration of vegetables. And Ista, you came in, you worked together. How was it for you, Ista, to write this book together with Yotam and to find some?
Sorry,
how was it for you to write this book together with Yotam?
Well, it was, as you can probably imagine, a bit
together, isn't it?
As you can probably imagine, it was a bit of a dream come true. Yeah, this is a fantastic job, and it's actually a job that I never really knew that existed. When I was working in a restaurant, in Yotam's restaurant, Noppi, doing sort of 50, 60 hours a week, I didn't even know that the test kitchen existed, and I didn't know that recipe development existed. So it's a dream job, really.
I mean, this is the test kitchen, by the way. So just to set the scene a little bit, this is where all the recipe testing actually takes place. And if you hear a noise sometimes, like now, for instance,
yes,
it's because we're under a railway. So there's a train going over our heads just as we speak. So occasionally, you'll have a bit of that noise, but I hope we can live with it. And when Ista came from Noppi to work here, and like other people who come to work in the test kitchen, it takes time kind of to fit into understand exactly what it is. But the whole concept of the test kitchen is that people work quite independently. So Ista has brought some of her personal traditions into personal history into the test kitchen, with ideas that come from Italy, where she's spent time, or South America, and those things are incorporated into the recipes in the book.
And I read something about the Mexican grandfather, isn't it? Or
yeah. So my grandfather, well, my mum lived in Mexico for a while as well, but then my dad's father lived in Mexico for the last 30 years of his life. So I had family there, and we visited Mexico a lot. And my parents actually named me after a Mexican volcano. So my name is Mexican. I'm just generally obsessed with Mexican food, and especially chilies and dried chilies. So you'll probably have noticed that there's a lot of dried chilies in a Flavour 20 ingredients list. And we'll talk about those a bit more actually when we demo the next dish.
So
how are you doing with the
so this is hummus. We've made it in advance, so we don't need to make noise blitzing it. But essentially, the chickpeas have been soaking overnight with bicarbonate of soda, and then cooked until they're really, really soft the following day. And then we have here some. You want to add the? We have the. Tahini, olive oil, garlic, ginger, and lemon zest
and lemon juice. So it's quite a sharp hummus, very lemony, but also very aromatic with all that ginger in it. And then this oil is going to make it sort of even more aromatic.
Yeah, and we add those kind of harder aromatics. So the cinnamon sticks, the chili, and the garlic, they go in for about 5 minutes before we add the coriander stalks, and there's a lot of flavor in the stalks, so it's quite a good habit not to waste it. So first of all, it's edible, so you can eat it fresh. But over here, we're just adding it to the oil for the last minute of the cooking, so they don't burn. But then they also keep their color as a garnish for the hummus.
Nice thing, Yotam, in your books is that you always say when in interviews that cooking without garlic is for you just not possible. I think, but it's not. It's not in your recipes. Eh? It's just a fact of life, isn't it?
I think it's something that a lot of cooks would agree. I mean, garlic. I mean,
yeah, I do, but
we have a whole chapter in the book dedicated to onions and garlic. And members of that family, and I just think, I mean, it's such a wonderful thing, and it's also the transformation. We talk a lot about the book about transformation that happens to these ingredients through the cooking. It's pretty amazing.
So we've got really crispy ingredients here. I don't know if you can see it. I wish you could smell it. And we've got really beautiful aromatic red yellow oil. So we'll probably just leave that to cool for a minute, or we can just put it straight on.
Yeah, do you want to start heating up the pan?
Meanwhile, I'll ask you some questions because we received the questions of the readers. And if I interrupt you, just say it. And if you have like to explain something, then we change it. It's very easy. But there was a reader named Saskia van Reden. And she asks, Ishta, I think it's interesting for you. What's the best dish your grandfather or grandmother made for you?
Well, actually, funnily enough, neither of I never met my grandfather. He died a long time ago.
Yeah.
But my step grandmother, who lived in the house in his house in Mexico for many years, she was a fantastic cook. But she actually had cooks as well. So whenever we went to Mexico, it was her cooks called Gume and Maria Concha who used to cook for us. And my favorite thing that they used to make was Chile Reno, which is stuffed peppers. So you char peppers and then you stuff them either with meat or prawn or cheese. And then you cover them in a batter and then you deep fry them. And then you eat them usually with a salsa roja or salsa and with lots of lime juice in it. I think it's one of the most delicious meals in the world.
And for you, Yotam, do you have memories?
Similar, right?
Yeah.
The Guardian, so they can go and find it.
Yeah, we actually recently published. Actually, no. Sorry, it's coming. We're publishing a recipe in December.
Okay.
For this dish, so you'll be able to see it in the Guardian soon.
Okay. Yeah, we will look it up. It's in December, you said.
I'm actually just finishing this
hummus
now. And, I will get it using that golden oil.
Beautiful.
Go all over the plate, and you can't use too much oil here really because it just gives so much flavor. I'm just going to show it to you.
There it is. Great, yes. And this is in your book. Do you know somewhere we can find it back?
So that's in.
It's in the infusion section. It's on page 79. So
okay. Yeah, probably the translation is a little bit different, but I think it's in the fusion section. So when we watch this now, people can start running to the kitchen and try it. And another question from Margot Scholtes. She says, for us in the Netherlands, the eggplant as a vegetable is still a little bit unknown. For inspiration, can you tell us it's a big question. Can you tell us 5 different ways to prepare a dish with an eggplant? So what can you do with an eggplant?
Well, we've got probably about 5 different ways of using it. We've got about 5 different ways of using an eggplant in Flavour, actually. So we've got the steamed aubergines, which come with
to read the book anyway.
Sorry?
So Margot, who asked the question, she has to read the book anyway, I say. But you will do, of course.
But so steamed aubergines are a very different and interesting way of cooking aubergines. And what happens then, they kind of become a sponge for whatever sauce you put on them. So in in Flavour, we've got a charred chili salsa and a fried ginger and garlic aromatic oil with lots of fresh herbs at the top, at the end. So steaming is one way.
Yeah, and I think for people who are afraid of aubergines, I think the best way is to do what I've done in many books in the past, is just simple oven roasting.
Yeah.
Because and then there's a few tips, you know, if you're feeling a little bit apprehensive about it. One of them is to be quite generous with the oil and cut them quite thickly, so they don't dry out and burn, and then you get the kind of fleshiness, meatiness of it. So and also don't undercook them. So you want quite a lot of color. You want that oil to soak nicely into the flesh of the eggplants or the aubergine, and you want to cook it for enough time to get real color and get everything to cook properly. And it's important to season with salt.
Yes.
In fact, it's very easy to have a very nice meal with eggplant of aubergine. I mean, like you say, you need some oil, some garlic, and an oven, and then it's done. Life can be easy,
Should we move on to the next thing?
Yeah. So I'm just going to start the oil for the, so this is the butter beans and smoked cascabel oil. So for this oil, the most important part is charring all the ingredients. So we've got jalapeno chilies here. We've got dried cascabel chilies, which I'll tell you about in a minute. We've got garlic. We've got lime skin, lemon skin, coriander seeds, and cumin seeds. So it sounds like a lot of ingredients, but it's all very simple. We're just going to char it in a really hot pan until all the ingredients are nice and blackened. And what that does is just draws out all of these flavors from within these vegetables and that flavors of bitterness, sweetness, savory. So we're just going to add all of those in, except for the seeds for now, and then just char them until they're nice and black. So we use cascabel chilies quite a lot. So this is the cascabel chili. So this is one of our favorite chilies. And of course, Yotam's been using dried chilies in his cooking for a really long time, but we do have quite a lot of recipes in Flavour that have chilies. And it's quite good to note that we use a lot of chilies, but it's not just about the heat. So when we're using a chili like cascabel, it's for the flavour, not for the heat. So this is actually quite a medium to mild chili, but it has sort of chocolatey aromas and fruity and smoky. So that's why we're using it in this context. And the jalapeno that we're using, of course, can be really hot, but if you prefer less heat, you can absolutely remove the seeds and remove the pith that holds all the spice.
And one of the points about this whole thing, what we're doing now, is when we did the hummus, we talked a lot about the infusion of the oil with the aromatics. So as you've seen, we've taken the ginger, the garlic, the chilies, and we added them to the hot oil and cooked it together for a little while, and then we had both crispy aromatics. But here in this case, we take an extra step and we actually char the aromatics. So we add smoky flavor to them, and the charring process, in which the skin is kind of burned, teases out the flavor in those ingredients. So you get more of the lemony flavor, more of the lime flavor, more of those chilies, and through this heat. And later on, we're also going to infuse. So we're doing two things. We're adding flavor by charring, but we're also going to infuse in oil just the same as we've done to the hummus. I forgot to put some coriander for garnish here, just to remember.
So this oil that we're creating here, the smoked cascabel oil, in Flavour we use it to dress butter beans. So we ask you to keep the butter beans in its oil for at least a couple of hours so they can soak up all that delicious flavour. But you can also use this oil for so many different things. It could help you dress a salad. It could you could put it over pasta or on toast.
You can dice your feta and put it there and infuse feta with this oil.
In Yotam's restaurant, Rovi, they have a dish where they put cooked mussels in this oil.
Yeah.
And also smoked potatoes with cascabel oil.
So good.
So once you've got this oil, you and you've eaten the butter beans, keep the oil because you can use it for so many different things.
Yeah.
Totally.
Meanwhile, I feel a little bit poor sitting here in a quite empty bookstore in Amsterdam. Next time we have to do this.
We have to do it in Scheltema. Yeah.
In real life, but you know, that's for after COVID. Good times will be back for sure. Yeah.
And I want to say one thing about the charring process before
Yeah.
you ask this question. It's quite important not to be afraid of charring. So when some people who don't know would look at this garlic and say, oh, you know, I'll bring it close to the thing. Oh, it's burnt, right? It looks all black.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, that's actually, in actual fact, that's what you want. That's the flavor. Everything that comes out of that, all the flavor that comes out of that burnt skin is additional flavor. You know, that just emphasizes more the things that happen while you char. You know, that burning effect, and it's really, really effective way. So don't be shy about that part of the process. Get it so you can get all those flavors into your oil.
Just let it go.
Let it go, yeah.
And meanwhile, I have a question. Mart Cox says, he's asking, what's according to you the most versatile vegetable, and which one is your favorite, and why?
My favorite vegetable?
Yes.
So this will, you know, we've been asked this question a few times, and every time we give the answer, we give a different answer.
Yes, of course. Like your favorite movie, you have a different movie every
the reason being, it all depends on what you cooked yesterday, or what are the recipes. How you feeling today, and you know what you've just had. So I think in this book some interesting things happen with different vegetables. So if we're in the context of this book, it's quite interesting to answer this question. One of the ingredients we use quite a lot is celeriac.
Yes, it's knolselderij in Dutch. So I translate it because it's very. I didn't know the word before. Celeriac. It's knolselderij for the viewers. Okay, sorry.
And it seems like a harmless root vegetable, and it is a harmless root vegetable that really you can get incredible flavor out through a slow cooking process. And in this book, we have one very simple method for cooking a whole celeriac head, which includes putting it in the oven essentially with some oil and salt for a good 3 hours, and allowing it to really cook slowly for all the starches to turn into sugars, and you get a wonderfully browned flesh. And for me, this is an incredible experience in its own right, and I can literally just have that with a squeeze of lemon and some flaky salt, and I'm pretty happy. But this is also a starting point for 3 different recipes in the book, and then involves cutting the celeriacs into thick steaks and finishing them off in the oven, and then serving them with a creamy, buttery French Café de Paris sauce, which has got a lot of flavors going on in it as well, from soft herbs to chili powder to mustard powder. So it's a really, really lovely sauce that goes with. Really very, very aromatic and wonderfully strong. And then we have another one where the celeriac is served with homemade sweet chili sauce and some pickled celeriac. And the third one is we put them in little cabbage leaves and add some goat's cheese and barbecue sauce and eat it like a taco. So 3 things to do with celeriac, but you can really go as simple or as complicated as you want.
Yeah, I have to admit that your book is doing a great thing for the reputation of the celeriac. I mean, in Holland, we didn't know how to deal with it, but now we're very happy with it. So that's good.
You don't just have to feed it to the pigs.
Yes, I'm afraid we did. Do you still have memories to your time back in Amsterdam, Yotam? Just for
yeah, lots of memories. In actual fact, the other day I was watching.
You lived there for a while, in Amsterdam. You lived there for a while.
I was watching, yeah, I lived in Amsterdam in the 1990s, and I was watching a British TV drama on the BBC called Us. And there's a whole episode that takes place in Amsterdam with it's about a complicated relationship between a father and a teenage son.
Yeah.
And I recognize every canal and every shop front and every door front. I found it very touching. Yeah.
Yeah. And the food, do you still have memories to Dutch food? Or
Oh, yes, I do. I do. I mean, I used to remember, I think I went every single day or every other day to have herring with bolche on one of the canals. It's just, it's just something. As soon as I arrive at the train station in Amsterdam, I go to one of those stands and buy the herring with the bun and the onion.
So
I
good.
can't get it.
how about the croquette?
I couldn't get it now. No.
No. Yeah, and how about the croquettes? You know, the Dutch croquettes? No, you don't eat that?
Yeah. Of course, I missed those as well.
Okay, so I still good memories. Is it doing well? Are you doing well over there?
With the oil, I'm just going to tell you how we're finishing it. So I've charred all the ingredients: the fresh chili, the dried chili, the garlic, the lime skin. Now I've added it to a pot with olive oil with plenty of sea salt and lemon juice and lime juice. And then also some coriander seeds and cumin seeds. And then we're just going to gently heat that oil. And we're going to use tongs or a spoon or a whisk or a potato masher to just squeeze all the ingredients into the oil.
Yes.
And we're just going to basically be squeezing all of that flavor into the oil.
And I want to say you can't see into the pan, but it's quite a lot of oil. So you've got like about that much oil on the bottom. So all those aromatics, after they've been charred and heated up, and now they're just going to cook a little bit. So through the heating, the oil is going to absorb all those flavors. And you can't smell it obviously, but we can smell it, especially feel the chili go through the throat, and it's the most wonderful experience because you kind of know that all translates to really strong flavors.
Yeah, very nice. Looks very good. Yeah, it's a pity we can't smell it, but you know, probably in the next lockdown we invent something.
Hopefully you make it.
Let's do another question. I see Rose Simons. She says, if there was only one dish that you could cook for the rest of your life, what dish would that be?
One dish.
Yeah, that's also tough.
I think for me, it would always be between lasagna and tacos. Those are my two favorite, my death row foods.
There is a killer lasagna in this book that I really recommend everyone to try it if they bought the book. It's a mushroom lasagna, and Easter created it after a different non-vegetarian meaty pork lasagna that she had when she was growing up. But this one has got like more than 1 kilogram worth of mushrooms. But the flavors are so concentrated and so wonderful, and it's got it uses pecorino and parmesan, and it's just one of the most wonderful recipes in the book. If you cook one thing from Flavour over your lockdown, I recommend this one, especially since we're getting into winter and it's getting cooler, and it's one of those recipes. It's really, I highly recommend.
And great for leftovers as well.
Good, to have later.
Yeah. Well, if you're at home and eating 3 meals a day at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it will have to be something with rice and lentils, because this is a combination that I really, really love. And I've cooked all sorts of things, over the years, but the good old majadra with rice and lentils, fried onion and spices with a dollop of yogurt, for me that's just the best thing. I that's something that I also cook for my children, and they love it. It's a classic for me.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's good for this period also. We have to survive this. Let's do another question if you have more time. Let's see. John Kroll, he says, you are inspiring many people in the Netherlands as a chef, as an author of wonderful recipes and beautiful cookbooks. But do you in turn get your inspiration? Oh, I already did that from the Netherlands. Yeah, you told about the herring. So,
no, I can talk about the coquette a bit more because it's something that I've when I lived in Amsterdam, I used to go to get them as much as possible, and I love the prawn, the harnalen croquettes,
Nala croquettes,
which are,
yeah.
yeah, I think they are just like one of the best in the world, and even better than the Spanish varieties. And every time I've stole it many times. Anyway, every time I come to Amsterdam, I go to Holtkamp and buy them frozen, and then I cook them at home when I get back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been for a long time, but I used to have a stash in my freezer, and then I'd keep them and fry them whenever I feel a bit peckish.
So the viewers in Amsterdam, they have to run to the Vijzelstraat now because when you get back here, you buy the stock. And Roos, let's see another question. Yeah, there was also a question from Marjan Wolfers. He said, cooks like Ista in your restaurant, Yotam, do they have to learn a special philosophy or a special education before they get in? But in fact, you already tell in your book that Ista came in, you're what we call an autodidact, people who learns it herself in your case. So I think it's people can get in when they are creative enough, or what's the main?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is people probably bring most of what they need with them, in terms of like that's what's important, that there is a sense of cooking and identity, and because in a way it's not about creating clones, it's about changing and evolving, and that's always been the philosophy behind the work at the Test Kitchen. But there's also some principles that are involved, presentation and flavor contrast, etc., that we do, and I think it's probably a little bit of both. Ista can tell you, if you want, about her experience, working and in the Test Kitchen. But I think it's more democratic than people think. We normally get around a plate and have a conversation and discuss it, and what comes out is super exciting just because we just had a really great conversation. I think this is what this place is all about.
Yeah, and is that now you finished the recipe, or did you put something you did the last?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I just put the butter beans in here, so now they're gonna.
So I can see the oil now. Yeah.
But like I said, so once you've finished eating the butter beans, then keep that oil, because that's a wonder oil.
It's gold.
It's gold, liquid gold. Yeah, that you can use to finish all your dishes, pasta, pizza, salad. Maybe not desserts, but
very good.
It would be really good to show the color of the oil. Do you want to do that?
Oh yeah, nice.
So I'm gonna put that in there with all the aromatics. So you don't throw any of those aromatics away, because you can have this sitting in your fridge and the flavors will just get better and better every day. Although it probably won't last that long. There we go. So that's something a fantastic dish to make and keep in your fridge for, I was about to say for when you have guests over. It's a perfect thing to give them with a glass of wine, but that might not happen anytime soon. But if you're working from home, it's a perfect little snack to have by your computer.
Yeah. Or also, it's also a really good Christmas present if you're going to be giving a present. A jar of these butter beans in chili oil. It's the most delicious thing.
Yeah. So we are lucky people now, because we don't have to think about that anymore. And so you solve a lot of problems. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's some small Edward Tonino. He asked, do you have an advice to us as chefs at home in these special times of quarantine? some culinary advice when you're at home.
Yeah.
Not very easy to do your groceries. Uh, yeah, some suggestion. What
Well,
can
one of the things that I've done a lot in the previous lockdown, because we had a first lockdown was in the spring and early summer, was to use up ingredients. So we used to where we were, there was a place where I could go and get sourdough bread, and that sourdough was so precious to me, and I didn't want to use it. So there's a lot of ideas that came through to use stale bread, which I think people would appreciate even more when they're in lockdown, because it's so hard to go and get a good loaf of bread. So quite a lot of both savory and sweet bread puddings and French toasts. And one of the things we did quite a lot is fritters. So if you to turn, I mean, it's quite familiar to people who do it, but to turn your bread into chunky breadcrumbs, not fine, but just chunky, so they absorb more flavor, and mix it with whatever cooked vegetables that you have, or that there's cheese and lots of herbs and egg. In my house, it was always popular. Those kind of. And it's an easy thing to do. It's a great user up of ingredients, and it's something that hardly ever fails.
Yeah, sounds very good. There are a lot of questions all still coming in, but I think we have to run and we have to cook our own meals at home. So let's pick one more, and then we have to close the call. But let's see. Ishta Chantal Hofmeester, she says, were you already cooking when you were a child? So did you cook all your life, or was it something that started later? What was your favorite thing to cook or to bake?
I was cooking, I think, since I could hold a knife, really. I've always been obsessed with food. Even when I was really, really young, I was obsessed with food. And because my mum's from Brazil, but she grew up in Mexico and Cuba, and I also grew up in Italy. So by the time I was quite young, I'd already eaten a lot of delicious food. My mum isn't a very good cook, and she is a nutritionist. So at home, we ate really, really healthy food. And I think that's why I learned to cook, because she said to me when I was very young that if I wanted to eat all this food that I raved about, that I had to cook it myself. So that's kind of why I started cooking, so I could eat food that she didn't cook for me. So that's how I started. What was my favorite thing? I used to love making aubergine parmigiana when I was young. And another thing that I used to love making, which is not really a recipe, but it's a traditional thing that Tuscan children eat, which is stale bread with red wine and demerara sugar. It was an afternoon snack, and that was one of my favorite things to make, because my dad works in wine, so we always had the end of bottles of red wine. So old bread, red wine, and brown sugar is one of the best snacks ever. And
the thing is just to drink the bottle of wine, so that's also good. Yeah, very nice. So let's say after Plenty and More Plenty, the third celebration of vegetables. In fact, your book it's really a great book, and I know that a lot of people already bought it here in the Netherlands. I think everywhere. So according to them, I like to thank you very much for all your inspiration and all the great recipes and all these vegetables, and we're going to try and to cook them at home. The good thing about the bad lockdown is that we have more time to cook. So in that way, it's also, you always have to see it in a positive side. But Ishta and Yotam, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and to share the recipes with us. We're going to try this after the live stream, I guess, probably in the weekend or something like that. And we sent you an email with a lot of pictures, whether it succeeded or not. But I think it's quite easy when you do it. So I'm.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and have a good time. And people here in Amsterdam send you a lot of love. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Thank you.